Well, rather than just calling people out, should we get into it?
We shall.
Danny,
So,
Adnaan, hi. Hi, everybody else. I'm Charl. I'm the founder of Love and Money.
Okay.
No? Adnaan? Yeah? Oh, he's gone. Well, that was Adnaan. He's our partnerships director. And this is Danny, our creative director. And as soon as Adnaan comes back, we're going to take you through, I guess, our always kind of evolving approach to how to run a digital or a creative agency, I suppose, in 2023, and how we kind of go about thinking about delivering work that works, how we try to make stuff happen in the real world, as hard as that can be, and as much as we kind of lean on a digital first platform. So, Danny, I'll let you swing away with it, man.
thanks, mate. So, hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We're Love and Money, as Charl mentioned, big L, big M up on the screen at the moment. So we operate at the intersection of digital, brand, and tech. And of course, these worlds move really fast. You know, tools that are now really integral to the work that we do weren't even sort of possible a year ago. And if you think about looking forward, there's going to be a whole new suite of tools, that are going to revolutionize our work and the way that we do it over the coming months and years. And I guess that's kind of why we're so focused on building them ourselves. But more on that in a moment. Having just spoken about digital technology, I'm actually going to perhaps counterintuitively start with a story from 5 years ago about an 86-year-old company who produced analog products. But trust me, it's all going to make sense. So in 2017, I actually wasn't part of Love and Money. I was working for this pretty remarkable venture called the Impossible Project. They're a European startup that had done something pretty epic. They'd managed to acquire the last surviving Polaroid factory on the planet. And, in doing so, it kind of safeguarded the priceless legacy of this, really unique and singular film format. And now we had like a really small but quite passionate in-house design team who are all very talented. And we'd just been tasked with this brief of a lifetime, really, which was to rebrand ourselves as Polaroid. We were going to be tasked with bringing back one of the most iconic brands of the 21st century after a long time in the wilderness. But amid that excitement, there was also, I have to be honest, like a slight feeling of panic. So much of the work from Polaroid's golden era in the 70s and 80s had gone on, I guess, not only to inspire companies like Apple. The work in itself was still really, really good work, and it really stood the test of time. And so, the weight of expectation was immense, and there was a definite feeling of pressure. And so what we did is we called up our friends at Love and Money and asked if they'd like to be part of helping bring this icon into the digital era. Thankfully, they accepted, and Charl and the rest of his crew kind of decamped from Melbourne in Australia and came and spent a couple of months with my team in Berlin and Germany. So at this point, I was the client, basically. Now, obviously, the details of that time are their own story. There were different haircuts and all sorts of stuff. But suffice to say, I suppose, there were a few late nights, perhaps, moments of despair, elation, inspiration, clarity, all the good stuff that really comes with genuine creative collaboration across different teams. And we relaunched Polaroid to the world in late 2017 with a new brand that included everything from, a best-in-class digital experience, new software, hardware, environmental design, global launch campaign, all of that stuff. And the launch it went really well. It was a lot of fun, and the work was featured in quite a few places around the internet. Sales went up, got the hockey stick curve there for scientific proof, and everyone felt pretty great. But then Love and Money's contract was up. They left. They went back to Australia. And as many of you, I suppose, will know who have worked on in-house design teams, this is often the part where that perfect theoretical vision that an external consultancy or agency has helped you to create can so often collide with the unforgiving harshness of the reality of what you actually need to kind of like to bring this brand, to bring this vision into the world. And at this point, things can start to fall apart, except not in this story, I guess. It was kind of the opposite. Since my in-house design team and the creative team had been so deeply embedded with LAM, we weren't just like working underneath this dusty brand guidelines document. you know these things, right? The purpose usually often seems to be to tell you not to do stupid things that you probably wouldn't do anyway. Instead of that, though, we had a really clear understanding of the brand's essence and a vision for what we wanted it to achieve in the world. But perhaps more importantly, I guess, there was this real sense of ownership because we'd built it together. It was, one of the things that Charl used to say a lot, which I think is still really true, is that we had a platform that made ideas possible, not a uniform that would suffocate our creativity. And that platform used to allow us to do all manner of weird and wonderful things. We worked with all kinds of amazing photographers, collaborations with cultural behemoths, iconic luxury brands, legendary auteurs. But not only did we do all these things, we actually had the creative agency to do them all in-house, thanks to those tools that we developed with the LAM team. We focused all of our internal discussions and debates on the things that we built up together around product ideas, color choices, art direction styles, all that stuff. We really put this brand through its paces, and where necessary, we'd just evolve it. If something wasn't working for us or it wasn't serving the work that we're trying to do, we'd just change it and evolve it and move it on. The brand wasn't this immovable, inflexible, static object. It was subject to evolution and iteration. In other words, even though our collaboration with Love and Money had ended and we'd technically lost our creative agency when they went back to Australia, we'd gained something that was much more valuable. And that was that we had our own creative agency through the tools that we'd developed together and through our ability to use them.
Yeah, I guess this is kind of where I come back in, because it's a relatively classic story, right? You have the creative agency kind of comes in, has the big idea. It's all sort of, it's champagne and pats on the back. It feels like it's going to be a really great time. Ideas have that quality about them. They feel like they can kind of change the world, which is super exciting. But then, of course, just before everything is about to happen, or maybe just after everyone's had that initial kind of hockey stick curve, the agency kind of exits stage left. And us as the agency, on the other end of that, we're left to ask ourselves, are we the bad guys in this situation? We kind of get pigeonholed as kind of consultants, or I don't know, people with our kind of heads in the cloud. And it's it can really kind of, it can make you question what you're doing and why you're doing it. I think the thing is, I think the question kind of goes a little bit bigger than just the creative agency problem. I think it's a creativity problem. See, as creatives, we're sort of paid to be dreamers, really. We're paid to imagine things that don't yet exist. We are almost supposed to defy reality to some relatively high degree. This is why it's so hard to replicate creativity with machines, is that we don't know what we don't know. We're out there kind of, putting one and one together and coming up with three. And so there is something really inherent about being, to a relatively high degree, out of touch with reality. Of course, the problem is, if we want to change the world, if we want those ideas to really kind of have an impact, they are going to need to meet reality at some point, right? And reality can be relatively unforgiving. It's quite a humbling experience to see your kind of perfect idea meet contact with the real world and slowly get kind of corrupted as you kind of constantly negotiate with, what is going to have to stay and what's going to have to change. If anybody wants to have a truly humbling experience, create a website or some sort of object and then watch your mother or your friend or your sister try and use it. You'll wind up kind of sitting over their shoulders and trying to kind of manipulate the thing for them in the way that you thought it was meant to be made, and the way that you think it's meant to work. But the thing is, this is when the real work kind of happens. And this is when, this kind of, these trenches of trying to make something from the abstract into the real, or from the the figments, or drawing it from the figments of our imagination into the real world. that's when the real hard, real challenging work really starts. That's when you are forced to think really, really hard about the things that are and aren't negotiable, about the big idea. This is when you're forced to improvise, when strategy becomes really important. If you've got a plan that just needs to be executed, you don't have a strategy, you have a plan. But of course, as Eisenhower said, plans are worthless. It's the planning that's everything. And I think what he means there is that you need to have a strategy behind what you do so that you can understand when things don't go your way, how to stick to, the best possible path that's going to help you achieve your objectives. And the other thing, of course, is that if you do go through this really hard stuff, if you go through the trenches, if you stick through it, well, this is what becomes incredibly satisfying about your job, right? There's nothing more satisfying than working through a problem, than falling in love with a problem and really kind of finding that solution. There's something that you learn about yourself. There's something that you learn about the idea. There's just something that you learn in general by, really having to go through those tough times and those paces. And the obverse is true too. There's nothing less satisfying than feeling like all you do is kind of come up with ideas that never get executed on. So I don't think it's a creativity problem, and I don't think it's a creative problem. I think it's more of a business model problem. And this is what we've been kind of finding over the last 12 years, is that the bottleneck isn't really the creative spark. It's kind of the framework in which it operates. See, the economics of creativity, when still tied to the billable hour, are really, really tough. You are paying for that magic in really expensive increments. Now, as a rule of thumb, as a creative agency owner, or a knowledge worker, business owner, I suppose, working in creative services, the kind of rule of thumb is that you want to be charging about 3x what you pay for an hour. So if I'm hiring somebody for $30 an hour, I should be charging them out for about 90. And on top of that, you need to think about utilization rates, and people have holidays and superannuation and the whole thing. It becomes pretty tough. And then, of course, we then need to hand those costs over the client. So, the economics really kind of stop stacking up pretty quickly. This is part of why agencies are so expensive in the first place, and also why they are often not the right people to continue on and do that work, not sort of see it come to life. Which is a shame. It means that we kind of price ourselves out of kind of solving the ultimate problem. And so the question for us is, how do we get around this? How do we build a new business model around kind of creativity and creative consultancy? And in fact, how do we lower the cost of design without lowering its value? We assume, as we always do, that we need a new business model, but I actually think that, like anything, we can look to the past for some inspiration here. Obviously, this is Charles and Rayoons, and of course, they revolutionized the 20th century, and the homes that we live in and the products that we work in and live with every day. With this mentality, how do we use design to get the best to the most for the least? Now, this was meant to be the bit where Adnaan jumped in and started talking, but it seems that he's having some technical difficulties. Is that right, mate?
I see lips moving, and I see thumbs up. So I'm assuming that you can hear me. What I'm going to do is a visual aid. I can't hear you at all, so this is very disorientating. But clients, they hire us for professional creativity, right? Whatever that means. Which raises the question, is what we do really that creative? Really, when we think about it, when it comes to creative pursuits, is what we offer the most creative, especially in comparison to some of the clients that we work on. Because when we look at the clients that we work on, they're doing all sorts of fantastic things. For example, they're creating entirely new ways to build. This is a company that builds and rebuilds in hospitality, in government, in education. That's a pretty creative thing to be doing, right? Is what we do more creative than a company that can turn stone into sort of paper, scissors, or any other good that sort of creates the resources for productivity? I mean, when you think about what we do, does it really come into any sort of comparison to a company that can really turn the intangible into the tangible and trading the markets, like we do with CMC Connect? Maybe not. And even if we look at some of the clients that maybe produce something a little bit more beautiful, and something that we've actually tried to do ourselves, would you believe it? Creating the perfect mascara when you don't have the perfect one yourself. It's a pretty creative act. So when it comes to creativity, clients often come to us with the need to outsource that, right? But what they don't realize is that they have plenty of creativity of their own. And what we've come to realize is that there are really two types of things in the world. There are things that you can use, and there are things that you can use up. And when it comes to creativity, it should never be something that you use up. It should be something that you can use, and especially in design, it should be something that you can continue to use to create new outcomes. So what we've aimed to position our business to do, and what we've positioned all of our resource and production and delivery and strategy towards, is really creating these new tools that allow clients to continue to use creativity and use design to translate their very, very impressive and humbling ideas into real world manifestations, using some of the language that we've been lucky to have as our subject matter expertise. And as a result, we've built a product that doesn't rely on a creative agency, but rather empowers any organization of any size, of any scale, in any market to exercise creative agency of their own. And while these tools might start as something that looks and feels a little bit like a digital brand guide, they can really leverage technology to create so much more, and allow people to translate their ideas that might seem otherwise ordinary into creative artifacts that can inspire, that can engage, that can explain the idea that really gets them out of bed every day, and allows them to kind of share that idea so that others can take agency with that and push it further than they ever dreamed. There's a famous sort of Picassoism in that you start with an idea and then it becomes something else, and this allows clients to operationalize that idea. In the instance of the brands that we've been working with, Euphemia is a family office company, and we're able to create a brand identity that not only explained what they did, but also provided them the tools or the operating system to be able to give their customers the resources and use their brand actually to activate the entire startup ecosystem of Australia. Similarly, when it comes to Pear, we didn't build every touch point for their brand. Rather, we gave them a level playing field to be able to facilitate the conversations with their partners, with their freelance network all over the world, with their development teams to be able to build their brand themselves. Not sort of hoarding the creative tools and the craft that we've worked so hard to build ourselves, but rather spending our time to explain the ways these systems work so that they can activate them on their own terms. And with Cast, as we sort of mentioned earlier, turning their product into, or their brand into, a tool that allows them to create not just tools to take note, but tools to take action in the future. Being able to expand their range across product, across digital experience, across brand partnerships with external third parties, B2B and B2C. When we created their brand, we did so hoping that it could be an operating system into sort of a future of creation for the businesses and the creatives that they were hoping to target. And with this brand, again, we're able to create the tools that allow them to express themselves and help their customers sort of see themselves in that vision of removing friction and achieve their sort of purpose.
Yeah. So I guess for the last while, we've been thinking and kind of going around saying that brand and digital is beta together. We've always thought about brands and digital systems as kind of one and the same. But I guess what this is kind of leading us to, as we think about the kind of the business model behind creative agencies here, behind branding, behind our work kind of day to day, is really thinking about brand as a technology. And I think, again, as we look to sort of, continue to drive the marginal cost of creativity down, but still, keep the value of design where it is, we think that this gives us the opportunity to focus our designers, our creatives on those visions of the future, and then rely on best practice and these kind of operating systems to help kind of lower that marginal cost as we bring it into the world. It allows us to collaborate with our clients to share that load, not just internally, but with our client partners as well, which of course allows them to engage their teams, allows them to kind of scale internally too. Our way of thinking about it internally is maximizing room for magic. How do we make sure that we use technology to give humans that ability to be more human, to do that thing that only they can do? This is what kind of drives our long-term client partnerships. We've never been big on retainers. We've never liked the idea of locking people into kind of long-term relationships. Rather, any kind of client relationship should be like any good relationship. It should be one that you want to keep going back to. And that's, a big part of what Always Beta means to us. How do we make sure that we are there as kind of an ongoing partner to make sure that we can continue to see the future that nobody else can see, and to really kind of check in and see how those ideas that we've come up with or helped kind of bring into the world are going. And so I guess that's about it. If you want to see anything more about kind of Toolkit and how it works, there's the URL there. I think there's a little link in the chat. We are currently going through a beta program where what we're looking to do is bring on any new brands that we haven't actually built ourselves. We've had a lot of conversations over the past sort of 9 months as we've been building this technology with internal teams that have struggled to kind of operationalize the brands that they have worked on. And so what we're looking for now is a series of businesses who have gone through some kind of incredible branding process and who are looking to try and make something more of it, who are maybe a year or two down the track and looking to see how they can kind of extract that return on investment that they've made in brand. So we've got a bit of a beta program going now. And yeah, if there are any questions, please feel free to type them in. But thank you for coming along and checking this out.
Nice, and thank you for bearing with us as we dealt with a few tech issues. Adnaan, you nailed it, mate. Yeah, let's have a look. Have we got any questions coming through? I think also maybe just while we wait, maybe, you know, what we've got here, this is exciting for us. It's a beta program like Charl mentioned. So if you're part of or running an in-house design or creative team and you're looking to find ways to increase your creative agency, we'd absolutely love to hear from you. We're really, really open to collaborating and hearing what you think of this new product. Effectively, what you're looking at here and what that link takes you to, it's our attempt to recreate that sense of creative agency that I was describing for the Polaroid team, but for all of our clients. So this is something that we've spent a couple of years kind of building and codifying on, and yeah, we'd love your feedback and thoughts. So how's Polaroid doing these days? Fantastic question. Polaroid is doing really, really well. We were recently in London, and I caught up with an ex-colleague of mine who's the head of design there, and yeah, they've done a lot of interesting things. I think last year they launched a new mini format, so they're still expanding their product range, and they continue to improve the film quality and to try and make it more cheaper and affordable. Yeah, so they're going from strength to strength.
I think what's really interesting as well is that, like, obviously we don't work with Polaroid day to day anymore, and Danny has obviously moved on and joined us full time. But what's really cool is to see, you know, some of that brand system, or a lot of that brand system, sort of still in operation all these years later. And again, it's because we focus so much time and energy, or we think it's because we focus so much time and energy on that kind of operationalization of those ideas, and really, you know, had a team internally that was kind of trying to make sense of, you know, what was the idea that we kind of originally had, what was the system that we created, and which parts of those do we negotiate on, and which parts do we not, which bits do we need to kind of throw out and change. And I think for me, that's a big part of why it's been such a kind of an enduring system. I don't know what you think of that, Danny.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the idea with these tools is, again, it's that concept of not being a uniform, right? It's a platform. So, of course, things have changed and evolved since 2017, as they should. In fact, the logo has changed, I think, maybe more than once even. But the core essence of the brand, the things that we work to articulate have remained relatively consistent, and of course have been subject to iteration and evolution too.
Great. All right. Well, we've got 2 minutes left, I think. This is a 30-minute thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. Well, it's midnight here in London on Saturday, so I'm going to say thank you all very much for coming along. Thank you to Medium for having us, and thank you, Danny and Adnaan, for taking us through that.
Thanks all.